And as I was listening to John Steenhuisen, Silindelo and Mfundo, I just could not help but reflect on one other aspect that Dr. Frene Ginwala was known for. She was described just last week at another memorial service as an internationalist. She really believed in international solidarity. And as we know, if there was any time in the world that international solidarity is much needed, is today, with the rising levels of poverty in our country, inequality getting worse and worse, the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine. And we are having now to pay tribute to a soldier or a freedom fighter who flew the flag very high for South Africa in the international arena, advocating for international solidarity. Silindelo, I understand you have another guest with you. Some of the dignitaries keeping on arriving here. Over to you.
Yes, Brother Dan, I do. I have Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Ma. Just maybe give us a sense of your fondest memories of Dr. Ginwala and perhaps the lessons we take from the life that she led.
Well, I've got many lessons from Ginwala because I knew her even before we came back to South Africa. She was a very steady but very forthright and very principled person. And when we went to Parliament, it was a great pleasure to see her being the first speaker of the democratic South Africa. And of course, she insisted that that parliament had to be a people's parliament and that the South African people needed to have a voice. She also insisted that women of South Africa needed to be recognized. But she gave that parliament the decorum, the dignity, and set a very good foundation. But of course, it had a very big responsibility because that parliament did not come free. A lot of people lost their lives, and people sacrificed their lives for us to be free and for that parliament to be a people's parliament. And I think I will just remember her generosity of spirit. She was also a very generous comrade, and we learned a lot because I joined exile when I was younger, and she was amongst the older women who looked after us, who mentored us. So whatever I've turned out to be, she contributed towards mentoring me.
Thank you so much for your time, Doctor. All right, I just want to now move on to somebody who also was quite fond of her. We're just going to allow them to have a moment. It is a very, very, very emotional day, I think, for everyone who knew Dr. Ginwala. She's really someone who is one of those unsung heroes of our democracy. And I just want to bring in Mr. Cass Naidu from CASAC. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Just perhaps your fondest memories of Dr. Ginwala and your expectations today.
Well, I've known Frene for over 37 years, from when I was a very young man, and I learned so much from her over the years. She always challenged me. Her values and principles clearly rubbed off on me, and I hope that for the rest of my time in my professional and personal life, that I can live up to the very, very high standards that she set for everyone around her. And I certainly hope that today we will be paying tribute to the role that she played both in the struggle for liberation in South Africa, as well as the critical role that she played in ensuring that we start to build our institutions of governance, because those institutions, such as Parliament, are critical to the strengthening and sustainability of our democracy.
You know, the socioeconomic conditions of South Africans today, perhaps you could speak to what she would have wanted to see, perhaps, 30 years into this democracy.
Well, I think like many people, she was disappointed at the direction the country had taken in recent years, that we had not been as focused as we should have been on realizing that vision of the Constitution for which she worked so hard and of which she was a part of creating. But she always was the optimist and felt that we would be able to turn things around, and that government would indeed be able to move back towards the vision of the Constitution, towards putting the interests of the people first, and making sure that South Africa becomes the non-racial, non-sexist society that she lived and died for.
And perhaps moving forward, future leaders, what lessons do they take from the life that she lived?
Well, I think when we reflect on the life of Comrade Frene, there are so many lessons to be learned. Principles of integrity, of sticking by your principles, and never giving up on the fight, and pursuing it no matter how hard the times are. If one recalls when Frene first played a role to get our leaders out of the country in the 1960s. Those were the really dark days of apartheid. And she survived through all of that and managed to find the strength to see it through for many, many decades thereafter. And I think that is the lesson, particularly for young people in South Africa today, that the solutions may not necessarily come tomorrow, but it does not mean that we should not continue to fight for them.
Thank you so much for your time. We're going to allow Mr. Naidu to make his way inside. I do see Minister in the President. I just want to grab him before I go back to Mr. Bradan. I'm going to try and grab a word with Mr. Ngubele. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Perhaps your fondest memories of Dr. Ginwala and what you want South Africans to take from the life that she led.
Well, Mam Ginwala, if I'm correct, I think she's one of the first administrators in exile when ANC started to establish itself. If you follow the history, it will show you that O.R. Tambo was received by her in starting the first offices and so on. So you can imagine where she comes from. In other words, she's a monument. She's an archive of everything, an institution of what happened. The advantage and the privilege I had is that after the unbanning, when ANC started to establish structures, we were not called PEC then. We were called RECs. So what you call region now used to be called sub-region. Now, I was in the PEC called REC then. We had a privilege in Gauteng of being elected with stalwarts. I had a privilege to serve in an executive in Gauteng where she was a member like myself. Ben Turok and then Aubrey Mukwena, a lot of those senior leaders. So we had an opportunity to spend time to be exposed to that depth of leadership, to that experience. In other words, we were inaugurated, we were exposed, a solid old lady, firm, candid, consistent, anti-corruption, anti-inefficiency, uncompromising on illicit behavior. She didn't care who you are, whether you are a senior leader of the ANC. You know, one of the ANC leaders who she condemned in Parliament was a sport. He was in sport. I don't want to mention, may his soul rest in peace. It was Ginwala. He didn't care who you are. Mam Ginwala could go with you in a meeting. You having coffee together, and you find yourself in that meeting on her wrong side. She goes for you. The fact that you were having coffee, she was consistent. She was exemplary. You know, I usually say the credibility of any message lies in the integrity of the messenger. If the messenger has no integrity, the message always suffers. The message of the ANC through Frene Ginwala has always enjoyed credibility. She's a great loss, but she's one of those people, when we say renewal, when we say restore the ANC back to where it was, it is those memories that haunt us, that all her life, what she stood for, cannot be undermined during our time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bradan, I will be trying to speak to as many of those coming to attend the memorial as possible, but it's back to you. Just give us a sense as to what's happening inside.
Okay, thank you very much, Silindelo. Inside here, more dignitaries have arrived, and some of them that you've been talking to outside are also making their way in. But I'm joined now by the current chief whip of the ANC, who in the program I saw she'll be speaking on behalf of the Pan-African Parliament. But she's been part of the South African Parliament, the Democratic House of South Africa, since 1999. At that time, the late Dr. Frene Ginwala was still the Speaker. Just to pay tribute and share some of her memories, Ms. Majodina, good morning. Welcome to eNCA.
Thank you very much to you and the viewers. Indeed, we have lost a towering giant in the continent, a mother of substance, a woman warrior who made us to be where we are today. She recognized us as young women. When we joined Parliament in 1999, they were already there 5 years from 1994. But she embraced all of us. I was the youngest serving in the political committee, which was chaired by the then president, the deputy president, Dr. Zuma. But there was no point where I felt that I'm a young woman. She made us to be proud of our traditional outfit. Hence today I had to put a traditional outfit because she was very consistent with that. She is a founder of Pan-African Parliament. I'm the chair of the Southern region of Pan-African Parliament because she paved the way. She's that pioneer, and the continent has lost a dignified leader. She made Parliament to be a people's parliament. However, the conduct of members of Parliament, most of them, is unbecoming. And
so she'll be disappointed today.
She will be disappointed on the conduct of some members of Parliament because they compromise the decorum of Parliament. And we have amended the rules of Parliament to ensure that we bring back the dignity of Parliament, because Parliament is the parliament of the people. Robustness and rudeness, they don't go together.
I recall watching those parliamentary sessions then. She was pretty much fair. She treated everybody equally, whether you were in the opposition benches or the ruling party.
Oh yes, she did that. But also, she was a no-nonsense person in her own style. She was accommodative politically, but she knew when to draw a line. So we must not compromise and sacrifice what she has done so good. We must preserve it, take it forward.
Besides preserving it, how can this parliament going forward honor her legacy?
This parliament must, at a particular point, name some of the buildings with her name. She's such a woman of stature that her name must not be forgotten in any corridor of that parliament, as well as in the Pan-African Parliament. She fought for a rotational leadership of each and every region. Today, she's happy where she is. In June, we implemented that. We fought first, but finally we implemented that because she paved the way. And we're so thankful to the family, grateful to the ANC for giving us such a woman leader.
Okay, we'll hear you later. You're on the program to pay tribute on behalf of the Pan-African Parliament. Thank you for your time. That's Phene Majodina. She's the chief whip of the ANC currently in Parliament, but she's also, as she said, chairing the southern region of the Pan-African Parliament, of which the late Dr. Frene Ginwala was a founder. Later on in the program, Phene Majodina will pay her official tribute during this official memorial service. I'm joined now by Mr. Naren Singh of the IFP. He's been in Parliament since 1994, so he knows right from the beginning how the founding speaker, Dr. Frene Ginwala, ran things, and he's going to recall some of those moments with us. Mr. Singh, welcome to eNCA. Thank you very much for your time. You've been in Parliament right from the beginning, right from the dawn of democracy. You saw Dr. Frene Ginwala in action as you and other MPs under her leadership as a speaker were forming this new democratic parliament, setting up rules that never existed before. What's top of mind for you when you think about her?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Prince Buthelezi and I think, are amongst the only two IFP people that have stood the test of time since 1994 and worked under Dr. Frene Ginwala as Speaker. And she really, when she walked in and she was elected as Speaker, and when she went up to the chair, we said, here's the Iron Lady. You know who I'm talking about, the other Iron Lady, but she portrayed that kind of quality, that here is somebody that smiles at you, but can be firm at you, tell you when to get off when you have to get off, but somebody that I think welcomed all of us from all political parties. And in 1994, you know what it was like. We came from different political parties, different political mainstreams, but she accommodated us and made us feel welcome in the House of Parliament.
Yeah, watching from the outside, she seemed to be, as you said, firm, assertive, what I recall, but also treating everybody, including from the opposition benches, fairly during proceedings in Parliament those years.
Absolutely. I think she treated those of us in the opposition with the kid gloves rather than those in the ruling party. I think she expected more out of them than us. But you know, it was wonderful, and I was very proud to be chosen as part of the first parliamentary delegation to leave South Africa to go to the government of India and see how Parliament worked there and how government worked there. And she led us in that delegation. And there we saw the other side of Frene Ginwala, not this firm person that you always fear, but somebody who was friendly and allowed us to do what we wanted to do while we were there on this overseas trip.
Yeah, she was a speaker for everybody, hardworking. I understand she also served on a number of committees or subcommittees in Parliament while she was still a speaker. And she insisted on a particular style and decorum. Do you think today's Parliament honors that?
I don't think I have to answer that question. I think your viewers and everybody else knows that things have changed drastically since then. The eNCA Freedom Party, through leadership of Prince Buthelezi, we stand for, being morally upright. We stand for dressing well, and we stand for doing the right things, respecting rules of Parliament and respecting all rules. And we've always learned from Prince Buthelezi that you respect the office of a person rather than the person, and we do that even today. I think things have changed drastically today. Whether it is for the better or worse, South Africans need to judge.
How do you think you as an MP, this current Parliament, you are here today present, we've seen other MPs and other political party leaders, the opposition leader is here, John Steenhuisen, yourself, you're here, ANC leadership is here, and other parties, the PAC and so on, and Al-Jamaa are also in the room. How do you think you as MPs going forward can honor Dr. Frene Ginwala's legacy?
I think we need to respect Parliament for what it is. We need to respect Parliament as an institution, and we need to ensure that the rules that we put in place are respected by all of us. I think that would send a good signal to the public out there, because it's unfortunate sometimes when you walk out on the streets and people say, are you here from the circus? And to be called that kind of thing, as Parliament is the highest lawmaking institution in the land, we don't want to be called in those names, and I think we need to return it to its former glory. Be firm, be assertive, debate robustly, put your point across, but just respect the institution of Parliament.
Mr. Singh, thank you very much for your time. We'll let you go now. That's Naren Singh of the IFP, also just recalling Dr. Frene Ginwala. I mean, Mr. Singh has been in our Parliament since 1994. My colleague, our senior reporter, Silindelo Masikane, outside the City Hall, and she's monitoring the dignitaries arriving, speaking to a number of them. Let's go back to you, Silindelo. Morning again.
Bratan, I am outside with the current Speaker of Parliament, Ms. Nosiba Mapisa-Nqakula. She is in a bit of a hurry because we are going to start in about 15 minutes' time. Maybe just to talk about Dr. Ginwala's precedence that she set in terms of being the very first woman to hold that position as the Speaker of Parliament.
I think it's important for all of us to recognize that Frene did not just emerge as Speaker. Frene is one of those women who from the beginning, during her youth days, dedicated herself to fighting for the freedom of South African people. I'm sure you will also be aware, and I'm sure most speakers will raise this here, including the President, that Comrade Frene, amongst others, was deeply involved in the underground of the African National Congress. And it is for that reason that the likes of President Tambo were actually taken out of the country, assisted by Comrade Frene. So I think that's one of the things, because sometimes when we talk, people talk like Frene the Speaker. Yes, Frene the Speaker of the Republic of South Africa, but Comrade Frene, the liberator of the people of South Africa, amongst others, the activist who fought so hard to make sure that we are where we are today, to make sure that today we have a non-sexist, a democratic, and a non-racial South Africa. A Frene who fought and spoke at every conference against huge and heavy voices of men who did not want to really appreciate the role which is played by women within the African National Congress. But Comrade Frene would stand firm and say it is about time. It is time for women to occupy their rightful place of leadership. And indeed, the reason why today you see people talking about gender parity and so on, it is because of the likes of Comrade Frene. At the 1991 conference, the first conference held here in South Africa of the African National Congress after the unbanning of the organizations, Comrade Frene is amongst with Comrade Barbara, Comrade Baleka, Comrade Mashope, perhaps myself young then. We all took the floor and Comrade Frene was in the lead, and she was saying, we demand that women of the African National Congress be allowed to serve in these structures at a leadership level. And therefore at the time we're really pushing for women to form part of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Where are we today? Today we have 2 women in the top 7 of the African National Congress. Admittedly, it is not enough. We are always at the level of deputy. That's not what Comrade Frene fought for. So the struggle for women's emancipation continues. The struggle for women's empowerment and just recognition, just respect for women in the African National Congress and elsewhere in South Africa and the world continues. So I would like to say, for me, today, I'm one of those who can attest to the fact that we have seen the hard work and we have reaped the fruits of what Comrade Frene fought for, that iconic leader of the people, that human rights activist, that feminist, that mother to all, who could be very erratic at times, but she would put you in a right place and quickly you would recover and go back to her and seek better clarity of the issues she was raising with you. So that was the kind of leader Comrade Frene was. Very firm and earned respect across political divide. So it was not just, she was not a speaker of the ANC, she was a deployee of the ANC, but a speaker of the people of South Africa.
Thank you so much, Speaker. All right, I'm just going to allow you to go. That is the current Speaker of Parliament right now. As you can see, more and more dignitaries coming through here. Braden, we do hear some sirens as well. It does seem as though the President may be arriving. I want Shahid to just stay on these visuals. We are being, we are being moved a little bit back. Security is of course very tight around the precinct, but we do see that it does seem as though that the President or an official from the Presidency has arrived, but it does seem as though President Cyril Ramaphosa is certainly here. We do know, of course, Bradan, that he will be delivering the eulogy this morning at the official memorial service, and we do know that the program, of course, is going to be filled with many of those who will be remembering the life and times of Dr. Frene Ginwala, somebody who contributed immensely, of course, to our democracy, somebody who's one of the founders and the writers of the Constitution. We do see President Cyril Ramaphosa being received now by the Premier of the Gauteng province, that is Premier Panyaza Lesufi. We do know, of course, that the official program will be beginning at 10 a.m. We're about 10 minutes away from that. And so we do see that President Ramaphosa is heading inside now, which is a good signal that we will be starting any moment, and certainly on time this morning. Bradan, it's back to you inside.
Thank you very much, Silindelo. And inside here, the chairs are beginning to be full. Members of the ANC Women's League are seated. More dignitaries since we last spoke about what's happening inside have arrived. And we are building up slowly to that 10 o'clock. More and more people are now walking inside. But before we hand over to the program, I'm joined now by Hanif Hendricks. He's a member of parliament on behalf of Al Jamaa party. Mr. Hendricks, how do you think this parliament should honor the memory and the legacy of the founding speaker of a democratic parliament of South Africa, Dr. Ginwala?
Yeah, she was our beloved speaker, and she wanted all voices of all the different communities to be heard in parliament, and not only her own governing party. So to remember her is that speakers that follow, and our current speaker is following the lead, is to have all voices heard in parliament. That is what a speaker must promote, and she set those high standards. The South African parliament must be a people's parliament. That's what she wanted when I met her at the inauguration of President Ramaphosa. And we had lunch together, and I stayed with her until she left. And she told me about the fond memories she has. She admitted she was an iron lady. She took no nonsense. And she wants the speaker, whoever the speaker is, to take no nonsense. When the speaker says sit down, you sit down.
So that's firmness, but also fairness is important from a speaker.
Yes, look, she was very fair, coming from the legal profession. She was in the class of Judge Ismail Muhammad, our Chief Justice, and she believed in constitutional democracy, and she was not a person who wanted winner takes all. She wanted everyone to take part in South Africa's new constitutional dispensation.
And she fought for a non-sexist, non-racial and democratic South Africa. She was very firm as well on women empowerment, other speakers have told us.
Look, she was the first person to really speak up, and the ANC had to listen to her. The patriarchal ANC had to listen to her because she was very firm about it. And I think it's largely of her efforts that we have women taking the forefront. And I'm happy to see so many members of the ANC Women's League here. She took the lead.